Hi, this is Ramos Reviews, the channel where I quickly express my thoughts and opinions about all types of movies. Today I'll be looking at 2021 Spider-Man No Way Home, directed by Jon Watts. Now for over 1 to 2 years, I've been waiting for this movie to have a release date, trailer, teaser, photo still, literally anything. I legit have been waiting for this movie to come out ever since rumors were surfacing on the internet about Alfred Molina and Jamie Foxx returning characters. Then Tobey and Andrew began to get in the mix. I grew up with Tobey Maguire as Spider-Man, and I found Andrew to be a better portrayal of Spider-Man, but not Peter Parker. But I still thought they were both great overall at portraying Peter and Spider-Man. Lastly, Tom Holland joined the MCU, and he was alright at portraying both, but he did have the potential to become the best Peter and Spider-Man. So yeah, the level of hype I personally had to potentially see all three of them together was indescribable, and luckily I was not only content with it, but it completely exceeded my expectations. So once again, I don't have a clear rating system, but I do mainly base my ratings on things like how well it's made, like special effects, directing, acting, how good it's written, like the story, characters, and creativity, and how entertaining and enjoyable I found the movie to be overall. Now if you agree with me, that's great, and if you don't, that's fine. Everyone is open to an opinion, and this is just mine. Now, let's get to the breakdown. In Spider-Man No Way Home, we start with the ending of Far From Home. The entire world just found out that Peter is Spider-Man, and as time goes on, the lives of Peter Parker and the ones close to him begin to worsen. So he asks Doctor Strange for help, but due to a mistake, villains throughout the multiverse begin coming into the MCU, and he has to learn the hard way about the consequences of living a double life as our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Two things are keeping this movie from being perfect. The first is the fact that Sandman is visibly completely covered in sand, and yes, technically he is biologically, but in Spider-Man 3 he would always be in his human appearance for the majority of the time. They never even explain why he stays like that, but it's probably due to COVID restrictions and certain actors not ever being there on set. It's not a major issue, but if there's something inconsistent about the character, at least explain it. Similar to Electro, not the fact he was originally blue, that gets clearly explained, but the fact that somehow he knows Peter is Spider-Man. The villains began coming into the MCU because they all knew Peter was Spider-Man, which everyone clearly did, everyone but Electro. Now it can easily be fixed with clarification and confirmation from Mark Webb, considering Electro goes out of his way to tell Spider-Man that he's gathering data from the grid. Potentially that's how he figured out Peter's Spider-Man, though it was never actually confirmed. Still though, all the villains are pretty good in this film, even most people would disagree with me, since no one really stands out other than the Green Goblin. But it's only because he's the only one with a clear motive, and as we see, the biggest threat not only to Spider-Man, but to the lives of his loved ones. Defoe's portrayal here improved Green Goblin even further by being more uneasy, manipulative, unnerving, and just all around terrifying. He's my absolute favorite Spider-Man villain, live action and animated. I gotta say, this is the Green Goblin at his darkest and creepiest. It's such an amazing performance to watch, though the other villains give some decent ones as well. I've heard complaints about how some villains didn't get much screen time or dialogue, but at the same time, 4 of the villains had clear motives. I mean, do you really want to hear them repeat the same goals and evil plans that we've heard over and over again? I wouldn't, and luckily we don't. Instead, we get entertaining conversations and dynamics between Spider-Man and the villains that past Raimi and Web fans would absolutely love. Although, other than the Green Goblin, they were all equally threatening and dangerous to Peter, since he's facing them for the first time and have understandable reasons as to why they want to attack Peter. And their attacks give us greatly improved action sequences due to the use of upgraded, more dangerous tech, unprecedented ways of battling the villains, and the major improvement of the modern CGI, which of course also includes the incredible looking de-aging. And let me tell you, seeing Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire return as Spider-Man with such improvements is one of the greatest things I've ever seen. When we first see a past Spider-Man, they chose to go with Andrew first. Seeing him makes us happy and gives us hope, like he said he couldn't in The Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Hey, it's gonna be okay. This is gonna be alright.
You don't give people hope. You take it away.
Which after such a sad and hopeless scene is perfect storytelling. Then Tobey returns right after in such a nonchalant, joyful way, showing us how older and wiser he's gotten and is still the joyful Peter Parker we remember. It's such a cheerful moment that honestly just feels unreal. Such is the rest of the Spider-Man dynamic. When I tell you that it's everything I wanted and more, I'm being 100% honest. We get conversations about Uncle Ben, web fluid, past villains, love interests, everything the fans have been dreaming of seeing on the big screen. Andrew's Peter even gets the redemption that they personally needed for Gwen's death. Also, before that, we find out that over time, he began to get more violent due to his ever-growing anger, grief, and regret, making his redemption scene that much more special and gratifying. Also, Charlie Cox's return as Daredevil makes me so happy to see, even if it was for a short amount of time. Still, this movie is not about the cool returning characters and actors. It's about Peter Parker and his battle within himself as he begins to understand the stakes and consequences as he faces in his double life as Spider-Man. Because of this one portrayal, Tom has improved himself as Spider-Man and has now become my favorite live-action Spider-Man. He finally feels like the nerdy, smart-solving Peter and the wisecracking, selfless Spider-Man that I've always known. This movie has single-handedly fixed every issue and potential problem that I and many other fans have had with Tom Holland's Spider-Man in Homecoming and Far From Home. MCU's Peter was always being mentored and constantly made stupid decisions without thinking. However, here, Peter is mostly alone and ends the movie alone in his journey as Spider-Man. And instead of making stupid decisions off instinct, he logically recognizes the potential danger but goes through with it anyways. Not off instinct, but because of his hope and faith that he can save and cure the people who want to kill him. Yes, it's a dumb and risky decision, but it's a decision that only Spider-Man would make. Due to that decision, No Way Home is the most heartbreaking Spider-Man movie since the led to a sad ending and the shocking tragic death of Aunt May. Seeing Peter blame himself and knowing that she's dying, Aunt May still takes whatever she has left to tell her nephew that he did the right thing, and that with great power comes great responsibility. It makes the scene that much more emotional and impactful, easily topping Uncle Ben's death. It's even made that much worse since every character is more important to the story this time around, making me care more about them than I ever originally did. That goes for Aunt May, Ned, and especially MJ. She finally acts like the real MJ that I know, so it's great to see her in live action while not being super whiny. Plus, Peter and MJ are much closer and believably love each other, unlike in Far From Home, which makes their goodbyes just absolutely devastating to watch. Also, cinematically, this movie is phenomenal. The premise and events leading up to the multiverse characters coming through has no real flaws, and the fact that Doctor Strange and 9 MCU characters are introduced and present a lot in this film, it still feels like a Spider-Man solo movie that doesn't feel rushed whatsoever. Lastly, it ends with Spider-Man's amazing new comic accurate suit and the long-awaited hint of potentially giving us a Spider-Man battle that we've been wanting to see. Spider-Man versus an accurate villainous Venom. So with all that in mind, let's see what the movie earns at the rating. A masterpiece to me is something that's near perfect, almost flawless, because nothing is truly perfect. Movies like Inception, The Shawshank Redemption, The Dark Knight, and in my opinion, Spider-Man No Way Home. It's the funniest, darkest, most emotional, epic, well-written, heart-pumping Spider-Man movie that I've ever seen. Plus, any movie that manages to make me tear up gets automatically an extra point. Only 2 movies have ever made me tear up, Interstellar and No Way Home. And that's why it personally has to be a 10 out of 10, with a recommendation to watch if you enjoyed movies like Avengers Endgame, Zack Snyder's Justice League, and of course, any of the Spider-Man films. Thank you for watching this Ramos review on Jon Watts Spider-Man No Way Home. If you want me to review a movie, feel free to let me know in the comments down below. Also, if you enjoyed this review, please leave a like and subscribe. It would help me a lot and I would thoroughly appreciate it. Anyways, I'll talk to you in my next review.